What if Willow faced the pull of a black hole? In this season finale episode, Willow's powers are tested beyond reason as the team faces cosmic danger and she faces the possible reappearance of an old friend. Hey everyone, this is TH Stories 80, where we narrate fanfiction audiobooks. Now we begin chapter 26 of AEJ. Let's dive in. Goa'uld Teltak, vicinity of Hala. Major Carter, said Teal'c, all sensor scans indicate we should be at the Asgard homeworld. However, Willow and Carter stared out the forward viewer into the emptiness of space. There was only a field of stars. No planet, no sign of anything. It's gone, Carter said, interrupting Teal'c. Gone? Willow whispered, her eyes searching for any trace that a planet had ever existed at this location. But there was nothing. How can an entire planet just disappear? Suddenly they all heard an unearthly groan echoing from the engine room. Carter immediately sprinted toward the sound, with Willow following close behind. When Carter opened a panel containing the hyperdrive crystals, both women stared. The crystals were blackened and cracked. Damn, Carter whispered. The hyperdrive's busted. Willow looked at the destroyed crystals. You did say it was a possibility, ma'am. Carter pressed her lips together just as Teal'c's voice came over their radios. Major Carter, Willow Rosenberg, please report to the cockpit. Now what? Carter muttered under her breath as she ran back toward the cockpit, Willow close behind. What's up, Teal'c? She asked. Our engines are at full power, said Teal'c before pausing, tapping the console in front of him. His expression was stoic, but Willow could sense the concern beneath the surface. Oh boy, she thought to herself, if Teal'c's worried, then it's nothing good. Teal'c pressed his lips together, then looked over his shoulder at both Carter and Willow. He continued, however, this craft is unable to move forward. Willow and Carter exchanged uneasy glances and stared at the console. The engines were indeed at full power, but they weren't moving at all. Then came another metallic groan from all around them, as though the ship itself was screaming in pain. They looked at each other, realizing the same frightening truth. Oh no, Willow and Carter said in unison. Willow swallowed hard while Carter spoke. There's only one very frightening possibility. She had Teal'c bring up the rear view on the forward screen. When the image appeared, Willow gasped at the sight of what was preventing them from moving. Carter whispered, the gravitational effects of a black hole. You're saying the Asgard created a black hole? Willow exclaimed as the ship began to shake violently. She and Carter, both standing, grabbed for anything to steady themselves. Yes, shouted Major Carter over the ungodly noises reverberating through the Teltak. I am unable to break free, Teal'c shouted, struggling with the controls to keep the ship steady even though it wasn't moving forward. Increase power to the engines, Carter ordered. The engines are already at maximum power, Major Carter, Teal'c replied, yet we are still unable to escape the gravitational pull. The shield is maintaining structural integrity. Major, Willow said suddenly, a wild and risky idea forming in her mind. What if we transfer power from the shields to the engines? We'd get more power to the engines, Carter replied, and we might, I repeat might, be able to escape the black hole's pull. She shook her head as the groaning grew louder. But without shields, our structural integrity won't hold. What if I can hold it? Willow asked. Carter stared at her in confusion. Teal'c turned, one eyebrow arched. Carter had seen Willow's telepathy and telekinesis in action during tests. She could mentally lift small objects and weights equal to her body weight, or form a thin telekinetic barrier that hugged her skin, enough to deflect dangerous blows while still allowing movement. In one-on-one training with Teal'c, Willow could anticipate some of his strikes by reading his tactical thoughts. Still, he often misled her intentionally, reminding her not to rely too heavily on her abilities. But this, holding an interstellar ship together against the gravitational forces of a black hole, was far beyond anything she'd ever attempted. Willow, you've never done this before, Carter said. If you mean holding an interstellar ship together with my mind, then no, Willow admitted with a grimace. This would be my first time trying anything like it. It would be too much, Willow, Carter exclaimed. You're talking about using your mind to counteract the gravitational forces of a black hole. We don't have a choice, ma'am. Willow argued. If we transfer power from the shields without something holding the ship together, we'll die. And if we keep the shields active, the engines will burn out and we'll still die once the ship breaks apart. She took a breath. My plan has a very small chance of working, but maybe enough to keep us alive until an Asgard ship finds us. Carter met her eyes and saw the determination there. Are you sure you can do it? She asked. Yes, ma'am. Willow nodded, fingers crossed behind her back. Carter gave a short nod in acknowledgement. Willow stepped into the cargo hold, closed her eyes, and raised her arms to her sides, controlling her breathing. She visualized a network of overlapping telekinetic fields holding the ship together. Gradually, the shaking eased, but even with the Teltac's engines and residual shields absorbing most of the stress, Willow could already feel a sharp headache building. Teal'c, Carter shouted into her radio as she pulled open a power distribution panel filled with multicolored crystals. I'm about to transfer power from the shields to the engines. Keep sending the distress signal. Hopefully Thor or another Asgard will be nearby. Understood, Major Carter. Teal'c replied. Willow, are you ready? Carter asked. Yes, ma'am, Willow said, voice tight. As ready as I'll ever be. Teal'c, Carter yelled. Full power to the engines on my mark. Very well, Major Carter, Teal'c responded. Distress signal transmitting. Engines ready. 3, 2, 1. Carter counted, then pulled one of the crystals from its slot and slid it into another. The ship gave a violent jolt, the hull groaning around him. Mark! She shouted. The ship shook harder as thrust increased, then steadied slightly. Willow could feel the strain explode in her mind. The gravitational feedback slammed into her like burning ice. Without the Teltac shields, she was exposed to the black hole's full fury, compressed and stretched all at once. Need to hold on, Willow thought. She didn't dare open her eyes. Through the ringing in her ears, she barely heard Teal'c say they had some forward motion. Encouraged, she pushed harder, but the pain was overwhelming. She wanted to scream. Tears blurred her vision. The taste of iron filled her mouth. Warmth dripped from her nose. She heard footsteps rushing toward her, hands grabbing her shoulders, Carter's voice shouting her name. Willow clenched her fists and released a silent scream. If I stop now, we all die, she thought. Just a little longer, she kept thinking. Please, just a little longer. The pain was so much that Willow fell down to her knees. Carter knelt in front of her. Teal'c called out that they were moving, but too slowly. Carter's eyes widened as she saw blood running from Willow's nose. She rushed for the first aid kit, then hurried back, kneeling beside her. Willow, she said gently, wincing at the pain etched across the young woman's face. Hold on a little longer. Teal'c says we're moving. Before she could finish, Willow squinted through bloodshot eyes. Her teeth chattered. Major, she gasped. I must look like hell, huh? You're doing great, Willow, Carter said, brushing hair from her face, trying to ignore the blood on her upper lip. Sorry, Major, Willow whispered. I don't think I can hold it much longer. The ship began to groan again, shaking violently. Teal'c reported that their progress was slowing. Willow screamed as cracks appeared along the walls. I'm slipping, she cried. Major, get Teal'c, now. I'm going to try to put us all in a telekinetic bubble, but I need all of us to be close by. Carter shouted into her radio. Teal'c abandoned the cockpit and ran into the cargo hold. Willow screamed once more as the Teltac's hull tore open. Through her blurred vision, she saw the black hole, Carter's panicked face, and Teal'c shouting something about being pulled in. Then, a blinding white light and darkness. Carter felt the pull of the black hole as the hull gave way, Teal'c beside her. Then came a tingling sensation through their bodies, followed by another burst of white light. When it faded, Carter found herself kneeling on a cool metallic floor, Teal'c beside her. Willow was gone. In front of them, a familiar figure approached from behind the console. Major Carter, Teal'c, welcome aboard the Daniel Jackson, said Thor. Thor, where is Willow Rosenberg? Teal'c asked, helping Carter to her feet. Carter had the same question, and she could hear the worry in his voice. Do not worry, Teal'c, Major Carter, said Thor, manipulating the glowing stones on the console. Lieutenant Rosenberg has been beamed into a medical pod. As he spoke, another flash of white light revealed the pod containing Willow's unconscious body along the wall. Carter and Teal'c rushed over. Through the transparent cover, they saw Willow's pale face. The bleeding had stopped, but she looked ghostly. Is she going to be all right? Carter asked, voice trembling. Yes, Thor said calmly. However, my scans indicate significant trauma to parts of her brain. What? Carter gasped. A holographic image of Willow's brain appeared, highlighting the damage. Thor explained that while the trauma was extensive, the medical stasis pod was already repairing it. He then turned to Carter. What caused such injury? Carter and Teal'c exchanged glances. Carter finally said it would be best to explain once Willow recovered. Thor nodded and asked why they had come to Hala. They explained their primary mission was to help Colonel O'Neill, who was still in stasis. Before Thor could respond, an alarm blared throughout the ship. The three turned toward a nearby screen just in time to see an object emerging from the black hole's accretion disk at incredible speed. A replicator ship. Willow, unconscious, never felt the impact when Thor's ship was struck, nor the moment replicator bugs began boarding the vessel. She didn't see Major Carter being taken, or Thor returning to Earth to retrieve Daniel and the unconscious O'Neill in order to mount a rescue. All Willow could do was sleep, unaware of the chaos unfolding around her. Willow's home, Sunnydale, California. Willow's eyes snapped open at the sound of the alarm blaring from her bedside table. Groaning, she reached out, turned it off, and lay still for a moment, wondering if it might be better to just sleep in and skip school for one day. Nah. She sat up, swung her legs over the edge of the bed, and yawned before rushing off to take a shower and get dressed. It was already 7 in the morning, and she had just an hour before she needed to be at school. Classes didn't start until 8:30, but Willow liked arriving early. She wanted to catch Buffy and ask her how her patrol had gone the previous night. More than that, she wanted to find a way to be more useful. Sure, she was good at research, but there had to be something more she could do to help Buffy. Maybe magic, Willow thought as she stepped into the shower. Yeah, I could learn more about magic. Sunnydale High. The front lawn of the school was crowded as usual, students scattered across it in their own cliques. Some lounged on the grass, others leaned against trees or sat on benches. As Willow reached the stairs leading to the front doors, a strange sensation washed over her. It was as if there was a thought she was trying to grasp, just beyond reach, but it kept slipping away. A warm breeze brushed past her, yet the trees around the campus stood perfectly still, their leaves unmoving. Willow glanced around, feeling an odd prickle along her skin, as though someone were watching her. Everyone else seemed occupied. Some were reading, others chatting in groups, or tossing a football back and forth for fun. Will! She turned and smiled at the familiar voice. Buffy and Xander were walking up the stairs toward her. Xander waved and, once he reached her, slung an arm around her shoulders. Buffy smiled beside him. Xander grinned. We don't have an exam today, right, Will? No, Willow replied, rolling her eyes. She turned to Buffy. How was patrol? She asked quietly, lowering her voice so others wouldn't overhear. Dusted any vamps? Buffy chuckled and nodded. 3. It was a long night. Willow gave a determined nod. I'll find a way to help with the whole slaying thing. Buffy patted her shoulder with a warm smile as the trio made their way through the crowded hallway toward the lockers. A few minutes later, they pushed open the library doors and stepped inside. Faith was sitting on the counter, a smirk plastered on her face. She gave Buffy a nod and silently held up 6 fingers, the number of vampires she had dusted the night before. Buffy rolled her eyes before asking, Where's Giles? He's in the office. Some broad came by to introduce herself, Faith said, glancing toward Xander, who strolled, well, swaggered, really, up to her with his hands in his pockets. Willow wondered if Xander was trying to look cool. He had always had a strange fascination with slayers. A part of her wished he could actually see her the way he saw them. She pushed that thought away. She wasn't Buffy, and she definitely wasn't Faith. Her attention snapped back when Faith mentioned that the broad was the new school nurse. Faith turned her head toward Willow. A chill ran through the redhead for no reason she could explain. At the same time, she felt a confusing mix of emotions: jealousy, anger, and reluctant acceptance. Sure, there was a bit of jealousy. Faith was a Slayer, and that was a thing to share with Buffy. Ever since Faith's arrival, Willow had secretly worried that Buffy might drift closer to her new Slayer friend. But the flicker of anger surprised her. Why was she even mad? They had only known Faith for a few days. So, what ya been up to, Red? Faith asked. Willow hesitated. Just... What could she say? Researching? Trying to find ways to help Buffy? Anything she came up with sounded desperate. Or worse, pathetic. She pressed her lips together and finally said, "Just doing some research for a history paper." Faith tilted her head, a small smile tugging at her lips as if trying to guess what Willow was really thinking. Then she shrugged. "You know what? Instead of staying home researching, have some fun. How about you and me go out for a patrol?" "You and me," Willow squeaked. Buffy frowned. "It's dangerous." Faith waved off the concern, her gaze fixed on Willow. "Come on, Red. It'll be fun. I slay. You make sure I don't get jumped from behind by yelling, 'Behind you!' Then we grab a bite to eat and maybe dance at the bronze." Willow furrowed her brows, glancing at Buffy and Xander. Both were staring at Faith, who stared right back with that same infuriating smirk. Faith leaned back on the counter and added, "Good, it's a date." "Date?" Willow echoed, along with Buffy and Xander. Faith shrugged, looking away nonchalantly. Willow's thoughts spun. She had never considered dating girls before. She still liked Xander, though his attention was hopelessly fixed on Buffy. Was it really that different? She opened her mouth to speak, but words failed her. Faith's teasing grin only deepened. "Think about it, Red," Faith said with a wink. "You'll be cool." Before Willow could respond, the door to Giles's office swung open and two voices filled the air. "It has been a pleasure to meet you," Giles said, stepping out alongside a short, red-haired woman in a cream-colored pantsuit. "Once again, welcome to Sunnydale High." Giles introduced her as the new school nurse, though apparently she was also a doctor. "Dr. Janet Fraser, these are my assistants." Willow's eyes widened. She thought she recognized the woman from somewhere, though she couldn't quite place it. When she shook Fraser's hand, the doctor's kind brown eyes met hers, and that feeling of familiarity deepened. "You seem familiar," Willow murmured. Fraser smiled softly. A sudden warmth spread through Willow's body, followed by a wave of dizziness, light but disorientating. She closed her eyes and rubbed her temples. When she opened them again, the library was empty. Buffy, Giles, Xander, and Faith were gone. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, catching Fraser in its glow, giving her an almost ethereal aura. "Where's—" Willow turned in a slow circle, her voice trembling. "Where did everyone go?" Fraser pressed her lips together and took a step forward. "This isn't real, Willow." Willow frowned, confusion flickering in her eyes. In the distance, faint sounds echoed, screams, shouts, even gunfire. They sounded far away, like echoes through a dream. "You need to wake up," Fraser said. Willow shook her head. You sound so familiar." "Wake up, Willow." On board the Daniel Jackson, Willow's eyes snapped open. Her vision was blurred for a moment before clearing, revealing chaos through what appeared to be glass. Teal'c, Daniel, and O'Neill were firing the weapons at a man with a cold, expressionless face. She also noticed Thor hiding behind one of the consoles. The mysterious man being fired upon was being pushed back by the impact of the powerful rounds. "Wait," Willow thought as her mind caught up with, well, her mind. "Daniel didn't come with us on this mission, and Colonel O'Neill's awake? What happened?" And Willow's thoughts shifted to Fraser and that dream, or whatever it was. Was it a dream? She wondered, realizing the pain and headache she had experienced on the Teltac were now gone. A moment later, the pod hissed and the cover began to open. Willow saw a wave ripple across the mysterious man's skin and clothes. Within seconds, every bullet hole vanished. It was as if he had completely healed. Teal'c rushed at him, tackling him to the floor. Daniel and O'Neill pulled open the pod cover and helped Willow out. As soon as her feet touched the metallic floor, the mysterious man shoved Teal'c off him. Teal'c flew backward, hit a console, and landed with a heavy thud. What's going on? Willow cried out as the man, now clearly not human, walked over to Teal'c, picked up his P90, and opened fire. Willow, Daniel, and O'Neill ducked behind one console while Teal'c scrambled for cover behind another. The entire room erupted with gunfire. Willow soon realized the attacker was a human-formed replicator. How did that happen? Willow called out. Daniel checked his weapon and shouted that he was nearly out of rounds. O'Neill replied that he needed to get to the weapon. What weapon? Willow demanded, just as the gunfire stopped. Something that can stop replicators, Daniel said. Willow nodded as an idea formed in her mind. So, that's not human? Willow asked, nodding at the mysterious man who, for all intents and purposes, appeared to be a human-formed replicator. Daniel and O'Neill both shook their heads just as footsteps rushed toward them. The replicator appeared from around the console, his arm shifting into a blade, pulled back, and aimed straight at Willow. She stared at him, and he froze. Willow took several deep breaths. Her hands clenched into fists as she stood. Her telekinesis held him completely still, unable to move, though his eyes flickered rapidly between Willow and the others, who were cautiously emerging from cover. O'Neill, Dr. Jackson, Teal'c, Thor said, walking toward them. What have you done? Daniel answered first. It's Willow, Thor. Red? O'Neill asked, glancing between Willow and Daniel, silently demanding an explanation. Daniel gave a quick rundown that Willow now had telepathic and telekinetic abilities. O'Neill deadpanned. You couldn't tell me this when I woke up? Daniel shrugged. A very long story that only Willow can explain. O'Neill frowned at him, then glanced at Teal'c, who remained stoic. He looked over at Thor, who seemed just as surprised. Finally, O'Neill turned back to Willow, his expression practically shouting, Explain! Now! Willow heard the mental order loud and clear. I'll explain later, sir, she replied, her voice tinged with worry. Okay, whatever weapon you have, use it. This guy is fighting my hold on him. O'Neill rushed to the strange weapon resting on a chest-high pillar. It was cream-colored with glowing blue accents. Daniel quickly explained that the weapon had been designed by O'Neill himself when he still carried the ancient knowledge in his mind, before it was extracted. They watched as O'Neill picked it up, inserted his arm into the recessed section, and aimed at the replicator. A moment later, a strange wave-like blast shot out, traveling through the air and passing straight through the replicator. Instantly, the being that Willow held in place began to fall apart, collapsing into inert fragments on the floor. The weapon must have caused the communication between each nanocell to cease, rendering them inert, Thor said as he examined the remains scattered across the ship's deck. The Asgard have attempted to create such weapons, but we have been largely unsuccessful. So you can build it now and beat the replicators? Asked O'Neill. Now that I understand how it works, Thor replied, I can do better. I can release a similar disruption wave from my ship that will disable all replicators on Orilla at once. In the meantime, O'Neill said, let's see if we can find where Carter is being held on the planet. At that, Willow frowned in confusion. What happened to Major Carter? And, hold on, how did Daniel and Colonel O'Neill come on board? Surface of Orilla, Asgard homeworld, an hour later. The four remaining members of SG-1 were beamed down to the surface of Orilla by Thor, and immediately began moving toward the replicator ship where he believed Carter was being held captive. The ship itself was located near a vein of neutronium, the same element the Asgard used in their technology, and, coincidentally, the material required to build more human-form replicators. I can't read the Major's thoughts, Colonel, said Willow, her P90 raised and ready. It was strange. She couldn't mentally hear anyone. Even though she had learned to block out the thoughts of others, some usually broke through like a telepathic scream. Willow continued, saying, I'm not getting anything. O'Neill looked over at her. I'm thinking something. What is it? Willow furrowed her eyebrows. Nothing, she whispered. I'm not getting anything. Understood, said the colonel, his expression uneasy. Daniel and Teal'c exchanged concerned looks. Willow should have been able to hear them, especially if they were thinking loudly enough. The fact that she couldn't detect their thoughts was deeply unsettling, but O'Neill decided it was best to push that thought aside. Daniel, T, Red, watch out for hostiles, he called out. As they moved cautiously through the forest, Daniel heard a noise to his left. He turned just in time to see one of the bug-shaped replicators leaping toward him. He ducked, while Willow and the others opened fire on the swarm of mechanical creatures advancing on them. Is it too late to say that I hate bugs? Yelled Willow as she fired her weapon. At the same time, she tried using her telekinesis to lift the smaller replicators and hurl them into the path of the others. Quick point? My telekinesis isn't working either. More swarms emerged from the trees. Aw, nuts! O'Neill shouted over the weapon's fire. How can your abilities have been neutralized? He continued firing the disruptor weapon, turning several of the machines into piles of nanocells. No idea, sir, Willow called back as she kept shooting. Stop! A male voice suddenly shouted from nearby. The four members of SG-1 turned to see the human form replicator known as Fifth standing under a tree. Instantly, they trained the weapons on him. If you don't let me and my brethren go, Fifth yelled, then Major Carter will die. Sir? Willow asked, glancing at Colonel O'Neill. The colonel nodded toward her and slowly lowered his disruptor, signaling the others to do the same. Do you guys hear that? Said Daniel, looking around. From all directions, they could see swarms upon swarms of replicator bugs, some small, others as large as beetles, moving toward them. But the mechanical creatures passed harmlessly by, ignoring the humans completely. A few seconds later, Thor's voice came through the communicator. O'Neill, what is happening? Looks like they're getting ready to retreat, the colonel replied. O'Neill, the weapon is almost ready. The replicators must remain on the planet for it to be effective, said Thor. What about Carter? Asked the colonel. I am sorry, O'Neill, Thor responded. According to my scanners, she is still inside the ship. As the last bug passed them, O'Neill opened fire again, prompting the others to follow suit. But it was too late. They could only watch helplessly as the replicator ship lifted off, just as Thor activated the disruption weapon from orbit. O'Neill, Thor reported. The colony confirms all replicators on the surface have been rendered inert. However, the structure containing Major Carter has taken off. Suddenly, as if a switch had been flipped, Willow felt a wave of anger emanating from the colonel. She could now hear his thoughts, along with those of Daniel and Teal'c. They had failed to rescue Major Carter, even though they had saved Orilla. A few seconds later, a familiar voice echoed inside Willow's mind. Oh, she said suddenly, turning around with a grin. Red? O'Neill asked. Quick, follow me, Willow exclaimed, breaking into a run toward the trees. Major Carter's alive. O'Neill, Thor's voice came again through the oval communication stone he had given the colonel. My scans are detecting a fifth life sign close to your current location. Moments later, SG-1 burst through the tree line and entered a clearing. There, lying on the ground in black BDUs, was a familiar figure. Major Carter, Teal'c called. Major, Willow shouted. Carter! Sam! Slowly, Carter opened her eyes to see four faces looking down at her. Hey, Carter, O'Neill said with a smirk, reaching down to help her sit up. Hi, sir, she whispered with a faint smile. To her right, Carter saw Willow smiling warmly at her. Hi, ma'am. Willow, said the major softly, standing with some effort before pulling the redhead into a hug. You all right? Yes, ma'am, Willow replied. Had a nice long nap. Teal'c, Daniel, Carter said as she turned to hug both of them in turn. Sam, good to see you're all right, Daniel said. Indeed, Major Carter, Teal'c added. All right, kids, the colonel said, clapping his hands once. Let's go home and finish this reunion at my place. Yes, let's, said Willow. At the same time, Willow couldn't help but wonder how it was her abilities didn't work on the planet until after the replicators left. It was a disturbing question, one she would have to discuss with Carter, but at another time. And then there was Frasier in her dream. For some reason, Willow was questioning if it was a dream or not, especially when Frasier was telling her to wake up. Indeed, Teal'c replied to O'Neill's statement about going back home, just as the entire team was enveloped in white light and beamed back aboard the Daniel Jackson for their journey home to Earth. To be continued.